Hola amigos, soy Ruth and I want to present a series of lessons that will help you to learn to speak Spanish using Duolingo and these lessons. We're going to go through at least half a year's worth of Duolingo, perhaps a little bit more, un poquito más, starting at the beginning. And the very first thing that you learn on Duolingo is basic sentences. So let's get right into it. To form a basic sentence en inglés or en español, you need a subject, a verb and an object. So let's put those up here. Subject, verb and object. Our subject can be a person, a thing, or what's called a pronoun. So it could be Mrs. Jones or it could be she. It could be you, I, it could be a boy, a girl. So let's start with a boy. Un niño. Un niño. And if you have a look, we've got that squiggle over the N, which is ñ. So it's not nino, it's niño. Un niño. Then we need a verb, to eat. To eat is comer. But when we say a boy eats, it's not the same, is it? It's not to eat, a boy to eat. It's a boy eats. Well, it's the same in español. The verb changes un poco. So we have el niño come. El niño come. So now we've got the subject, a verb, and we need an object. For example, una manzana. Una manzana is an apple. El niño come una manzana. There's our basic sentence. Let's have a look at some more subjects that we could have. La mujer. Look at that letter. J is making a mujer. H sound. So you need to always be aware when you're studying con Duolingo that you need to concentrate on the sounds and pick them up. I find it very difficult, so I repeat, and there's that little sound button that you can use to repeat the sound as many times as you need it. La mujer. The verb stays the same. Come una manzana, an apple. Now, when we use a verb in Spanish, it changes according to the person. Like in English, but in English don't change so much. So in English we say he eats, but I eat without the S. And that's called conjugation. In Spanish, when it's yo, in the present tense, yo como. Yo como. You'll find that most verbs for yo, which means I, will end with the letter o. Now, in English, we say oh, and it's tempting to say that in Spanish. It's tempting to say yo como. Don't do that. Say yo como. And keep that oh nice and short, okay, amigos? Bien. Yo como una manzana. A simple sentence. You could also have tú, which means you. Notice it's got an accent on it. Tú. Tú comes una manzana. So now we have tú, and you'll notice it's got an S on the end, and that's normal in español for tú form verbs, tú means you, to have that S on the end. We can also make that into a question. We can say, do you eat apples? And all we need to do in Spanish is put a question mark either side. Tú comes manzanas? ¿Tú comes manzanas? That's the question. Do you eat apples? Did you notice? In English, we say, do you eat apples? Or does he eat apples? In Spanish, we don't need that do verb to help make a question. In Spanish, we just put question marks either side. ¿Tú comes manzanas? We can also say, ¿comes manzanas? We don't actually need that pronoun there. Now, él means he. You might think it means she because él is a female name in inglés, but pero en español El means he. And ella, listen carefully, ella, double L makes a y sound. Ella means she. Ella come manzanas. She eats apples. So here are our simple sentences en español. Now, Duolingo is great. A lot of people give a lot of criticism to Duolingo, but I don't think it's merited. They say, oh, it's a gamification and we don't really learn. Well, okay. Es difícil to move from using Español on the Duolingo app to speaking Español. I recognise that. But we don't need to throw the baby out with the bathwater. I think Duolingo is an excellent app. It's right here on my phone, which is great. It's a place I love. It's free and it's easy to do. And I like the streaks because that creates a habit that keeps you locked into that habit, and having friends involved in your streaks is great too. When we learn, you can imagine it like a triangle. At the thin part of the triangle is reading and hearing, and that's a lot of what we do on Duolingo, and reading out loud or hearing things or reading things quietly and putting the words in order that you're given. You're not recalling, you're not simulating real life by creating your own sentences. And that, recalling and simulating real life by producing your own sentences, is at the thick part of the triangle. That's where we learn 90% of what we're doing. So I think to learn from Duolingo, you need to keep a diary. You can keep a diary of the words that we're learning. So note down el vocabulario, and then you can test yourself, and that's recall. You can also keep a diary of the sentences, and I think that's useful because, again, you can test yourself. But really interesting is keeping a diary of the questions that come up. So on Duolingo, we get a question like, ¿Tú comes manzanas? And if you want to make it real and imagine a conversation, perhaps you could imagine a conversation with una vegana is a vegan. So, ¿Tú comes manzanas? Do you eat apples? ¿Tú comes pan? Do you eat bread? And then you can try to create your answers. Sí, yo como manzanas. Sí, yo como pan. And you might know the word leche, which means milk. The word bebes, which means you drink. So then you can ask, ¿Tú bebes leche? And una vegana will say, no, yo no bebo leche. So imagining real conversations, your brain doesn't know the difference when you're imagining it or when you're actually really doing it. I would say make a list of the questions, or you could get the questions that I've already written down in here and the list of vocabulary that I've already written down in here. And I would say create a dialogue with them that you could imagine really having. I also have a list of vocabulario, so you can write that down in your diary. It's good to copy out a verb a day. Do that in your diary. And finally, and I've put a link to a list of journaling questions, that it's good to have some free practice. So free practice would be your journal, and it could be about the weather, or it could be about what you've eaten today, or what you've done today, or the people that you've seen. Any kind of journaling. I've got over 60 questions in a sheet of simple questions, and I would use Google Translate to answer those questions in short, simple sentences. Write them down, perform them, and then you can come back to your journal of Spanish Duolingo, Spanish word lists, Spanish questions that you've answered, and Spanish journaling that you've used Duolingo with your short, simple sentences. And that's your reading. That's your personal reading about you. Okay, so that was basic sentences en español. I will be back next time to have a look at greetings en español contigo. Do have a look at the list of questions y nos vemos pronto. Adiós.